Hi, I am walking around and shooting a video because one of you or some of you have said, hey, Ashley, we like the videos where you move around and stuff, and I'm tired of being in your bedroom, which I completely understand. So I'm just walking around my dad's place. He just moved here in the south of France. Look at it. This is just his backyard. And there's, yeah, over this fence over here, there's a field. We'll have to go get another perspective. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of hang out with you and talk today. I'm not sure about what we're going to talk about. I literally just turned the camera on and said, you gotta just go spontaneous with this. But I just made a video that got posted maybe a couple days ago about what am I doing here? Why am I here? The Tao, so to speak, the mystery. And I wanted to kind of continue in that vein to some extent, to think about what are we playing with when we're trying to figure out who we are and what's going on and when we change. Because there's sort of like this thread that exists in all of change that keeps you in some form of consistency. What I mean by that is when you change, you're still you, you know? Here's the backyard. Look at that. See if I can get the fence out of the way. It's beautiful, right? It's beautiful. It smells beautiful too. There's like this freaking huge house. One person, huge house. I don't understand. I don't understand. It's middle of nowhere though, so you know, you say, oh my god, it's so big and he must be so rich. Well, I would think that too, but houses out in the middle of nowhere are not that expensive. I could buy a house. I'm like, wow, okay. Maybe I should just live in the middle of nowhere. Anyways, I digress. Where was I going? What was I talking about? This is a terrible video. Thank you for watching it. Maybe this is why I don't walk around, because I have so much ADD that I have a hard time focusing on you and what I'm speaking about if I'm not, like, if I'm walking around and suddenly it's everywhere. Maybe I need to edit these things. Also, like, I'm holding this camera and it's so heavy. Oh my god. Oh, but look at this. Oh, that's a good background. But very sunny. Anyways, it's the thread. That's what I was talking about. The thread of you and who you are and how you become you. Is there some part within you that's like your ego that maintains some sense of grounding in staying who you are? Because if you completely lost your ego, then you would have no sense of place of who you are or what you're doing or where you're going, you know? Whenever I talk about ego, people always associate bad things about ego. And to be honest, I think ego is actually like a really good thing most of the time. Because if you had no sense of self, how would you have a sense of place? How would you know like where you are, where you need to go, and how you need to be in order to operate within the world? Like, this world is not, oh my god, my arms. This world is not like, maybe I can put this on this car here. Okay. Can you stay there? Can you stay there? No? Okay, how about here? Okay, it's working. This is why I don't walk around and shoot these videos, because it's very hard to not want to edit these things, but a part of what I do is I try to maintain a non-edited state for most of my videos. For many reasons. One of them being I like this flow, I like this process that we have together. What do you think? Back to where we were. The ego. You know, the ego is this odd relationship I think we have. Maybe we can talk about it as a human trait and then as a trans trait, because you're probably trans. If you're watching this, you're probably trans. Yes, I'm sorry to break it to the eggs watching this video, but if you're watching this and you're still watching this, you're probably trans. But it's all right if you're like, well, probably, maybe, I'm not sure, that's okay. You can also stay there, because I don't think anyone should be pressured into being trans. It's not actually a cool thing to be trans. It's nice to be trans because you have a community and you have a clear path forward in who you are. But if you don't know if you're trans and you're questioning, just be like that and don't feel any pressure to decide. It's fine to just remain in purgatory for the rest of your life if you feel okay with that. I think there's a constant inquiry that any human has to have in understanding themselves. And as long as you're continuing to look within, I think wherever you go is just fine. That's an aside. But the ego as a human trait, you need it. And really, like, where we have conflict and where the negative association with the ego is when you talk about spiritual development. When you hear, for example, Buddha, when he reached enlightenment, it was realizing that he was fighting with his ego, and that the ego created this separation with the rest of the world, and that once he realized that he was creating a perception of a separation with the world and realized that he was fighting himself, he could let go and then transcend into an enlightened state. That's paraphrasing it. I think there's a lot more that you could kind of do with that, but that's paraphrasing it. And where the ego also comes up, so that's one, the ego comes up in terms of one's development and growth. And the other place where ego is negatively comes up is when you're dealing with conflict. When you're dealing with someone who is unwilling to let go of the thing that they've identified with and are now fighting you on it. And sometimes that's a good thing, because argumentation can create clarification, because people understand where you stand or where someone else stands. By arguing, I have to have a stance, and I also have to make my stance well known, or at least try my best to do that, right? So that can be a positive thing, but it's a negative thing when it's frivolous, when it doesn't actually make sense to do it. There's no positive, constructive outcome, and you just get lost in petty discussion. I think that there's a lot of petty discussion out there in the world, and especially in the world of politics. People, like, are they arguing about us being in bathrooms anymore? No. Was that ever like a thing that should have been argued about? No. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's random things that people will just argue about that have no actual meaning or able to have any human perspective on things. People should be able to go to the bathroom that they choose to. That's just a simple human principle, I think. And I'm not going to get into that, but you know what I mean. It's like we can argue over stupid things that don't make any sense. And so that's where I feel like the ego also gets lost. But for the most part, you need an ego. I have an ego. I have a really big ego. But I understand where the edges of my ego are in terms of the flaws. I understand that I'm not always right, that what I say can be wrong, and that if other people have opinions that are in conflict with mine, that's great. Like, let me hear them out if they're coming from a place where we're trying to be constructive and create meaning in ways where we can be better. But if you're gonna write a comment on my video like, oh my God, what is this man talking about? Always gonna be a man. Like, there's nothing constructive there, and you're already convinced in your own ego of what needs to happen or what you think the world is, and you're actually just in pain that you haven't resolved yet. This is what I would say. You're actually in pain that you haven't resolved yet. Why did you spend the time to try and hurt someone who's trying to do good things when you could also be doing good things? Well, you're trying to get the pain out of you, and to do that, you're just expressing the pain in the world. And that's a horrible thing. Lots of people are in so much pain that they need to hurt others because it makes them feel better, but actually never resolves their pain and creates more guilt and shame around their pain. Have you ever been on the negative side of being like a bully or someone that hurts others? I wouldn't say that I was ever a bully, but I definitely got in a lot of physical fights when I was a kid. I was a troubled child at times. Not like super troubled, but I'd say once every year or so, there was definitely a scuffle that I would get into with people. And it was mostly around justice. It was mostly around what I felt was right and what was considered wrong. Someone stealing something, someone being really mean or cruel. Kind of like being like a knight of justice. It's funny to share this with you because like I had no idea we were going to talk about this, and now you're knowing things about me very personally. So back to the ego. You kind of need an ego, right? Like, how else do you stand up for yourself? How else do you know who you are or even value who you are? I feel like when you transition, you really come up against your ego because it's saying, no, identify this way. But you're like, no, actually identify this way. And as you try to transform and transition, you get stuck in this place where parts of you have made it across the river, so to speak, and some of parts of you that are deeper down haven't made it. And that's where you can have a conflict with your ego. And I call that the gatekeeper. There's a part of you that basically says you can come out, and there's other parts of you that says, no, you can't come out. And what I've experienced, and I'm not sure how you've experienced this, but what I've experienced is I've felt like the princess, the part of me that is the woman, has been stuck on the other side of the river, and she's kind of yelling out across the river, and other parts of me are able to do things like change my name, wear a dress, put on makeup, but she's still stuck on the other side and hasn't been able to figure out how to get her to the other side. And that's where the long transition, I feel like, really comes into play, is opening those gates and figuring out how to get all the pieces of her to the other side for me. Where's that for you? Has that been an experience for yourself? Have you felt like there's parts of you locked away that you've been able to get across? Where are there parts of you that you haven't got across? And how might you find ways to get across them? This video is getting long, so I'm going to close it up with a healing. I'm going to send you some love and light, prayer for finding yourself, connecting with yourself, embodying and being powerful. You are valid, you are seen, you are loved. What you do is great. Thank you for doing it and being here today, and I'll see you in another episode. Bye.